Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Stories of Hope. And I'm so excited because we have Jessica here. And I asked you if you would come on. I think not that you maybe would have volunteered otherwise, but I said this before we started recording, how much I have loved your comments and your insights. You're so smart, you're so witty. And the insights that you've had around anxiety have been just really actually everybody has great insights, but so refreshing and funny. And I know I'm repeating myself, but like the humor and wit and intelligence of it, like not in a self-deprecating way, but just have been next level. And I've just loved it and have really like benefited from hearing them. And I know other people have the way you've said everything about the insights you've been having in the most humorous, light, insightful way. And so when you said yes to come on, I was like, I can't wait to have this conversation. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Okay. Yay. Well, and we can start anyway. You know, if you've listened, sometimes I just kind of pass it over and you can share um as much or as little as you want. You know, you could start anyway if you want to start, or even just share some of the insights you've had. What would feel best for you?
I guess I'll kind of start from the top.
Okay, great.
Um, so I'm very happy that you brought me on today. I remember hearing these stories of hope literally when I started the community because it was what I wanted at the time. I was like, I need hope. Like, sure, I'm glad that we're all on the struggle bus right now, and it's great. I love that we're all sinking slowly. But I was like, I also want to know who made it to the other side, like who's on the island that we're headed to. So I'm really glad to be doing this. Also, another reason I was excited to do it, or am, is I really wanted to be like that relatable bit that someone may need. Um, every story of hope that you've recorded, I've listened to, and there's always something that it's like, I identify with. Because there's this quote that they use it at work, but I use it in my personal life. It's like, you can't be what you can't see. So sometimes, sure, the hope is great, but sometimes you want to latch on to something else, not just anxiety, but it's like, I am a female. I am a minority, so I'm Hispanic. My family's from Latin America. Um, I am raised by a single mom, so we got a lot of abandonment trauma there. Um, I have a lot of like childhood abuse trauma as well. And yeah, just kind of been winging it at life. So I say all that to say, not to trauma bond with me, but more of, if I can kind of see the light, or if I can make light of a lot of stuff, it doesn't make me special. It's just kind of like who I am. So I definitely don't use humor to try to, gaslight myself into not being anxious, or to pretend, that I don't have, anxiety, trauma, depression. It's more of like, it was a coping mechanism as a child, but it's really developed into, this is who I am meant to be, not anxious, not depressed, not any of these other bad words. I'm just I'm just a kid in a adult human body, just kind of winging it through life. um, but I guess I'll start with the reason I joined the community. I did see you on TikTok and Instagram, and I know that algorithm, kind of played a part because I was doom Googling forever. Um, but I've had anxiety for most of my life. I didn't actually know it was anxiety until I started therapy in about 2020, during the pandemic, which pandemic was a great time for everyone, of course. Um, but it wasn't until I went to therapy then that I was told that, those chest pains that you had as a kid, that, you got EKGs for, but no one ever really found anything. They were not growth pains, they were anxiety. The bad worst case scenario ruminating I would do as a kid, when she was 5 minutes late getting home from work, she, her being in a ditch, yelling out for me, that imagery was not just normal, it was anxiety. And I always had really sweaty palms and feet. I mean, I still do, but back then I was even prescribed like a pumice stone, almost like sand by like our family doctor because it's like, oh, you have like hypo something something, where I just overly excessively sweat. Not the case. It was anxiety. So it's almost like growing up, I didn't know it was anxiety until I was an adult.
Mm.
So that's also kind of helped me on this healing journey because I like to see it as if little me could do it, because I ended up flourishing into an average adult. If little me could do it, not knowing, and, again, with all that trauma going on, and she was able to kind of comb through that noise and make it, I just kind of see it as like, there's just no way adult me is not going to. But what made me join the community was outside of that anxiety, I ended up having my first panic attack in January of this year. And I don't even know that I would say it was just one panic attack. I think I was stuck in a like 2-month long panic attack, honestly. Like everything was scary, everything was a problem, everything, would send this the little tingles up my spine, all of it, everything. Like even if a cup of, I think a mug broke one day and it was like, oh my God, this is doom. It's terrible. I'm all of this. Like everything became a problem. And I kind of relate to you in the sense that when you had your panic attack, you look at it now as like it happened, but it was bound to happen.
Yeah.
I see it that way now as well. Um, I'm 8 months postpartum. At the time, though, I was only about 3.5 months postpartum. So I was doing all that. My husband had just been sick, not gravely sick, but he was down and out for a couple of days. So it was just me taking care of everything and everyone. Like I said, my mom is my only parent. She had recently retired. So, I'm also like, is she okay? What is she doing? She wasn't living with us at the time. So, it's like, oh my God, if something happened, how is she going to get to me? So, all of that. And then I started back at work. I went off maternity leave and I tried to be super everything that I think all of it fell apart. So I thought because I worked from home, I thought I could work and take care of her at the same time. And it's almost like, haha, now. But she had historically been sleeping, 2 to 3 hours at a time, her naps. And it was like the day I started back at work, she decided 15-minute naps was the thing to do. So there's that. And then I was like, I'm going to prove that I can be just as strong a worker as I was when I left. Like baby doesn't change anything. Um, so I decided that of the 1,000 emails that were in my inbox, I was going to read every one so that I got up to date, which again is not the thing to do. So I think I just overstimulated my system to that point that it collapsed. And when I tell you that it wasn't even the anxiety, it was the OCD. Because it wasn't anxiety of like, oh, am I a bad mom? It started literally with like, what if something happened to my daughter? Or what if I hurt her? Which was, harm OCD, but then it was like false memory OCD at the same time. And they like layered. It was always like, it couldn't just be one problem, it was always two.
Mm.
So it was that. So like that sent me into a panic. And then um just all of the OCDs, all of the subcategories. And I did everything that I could. I read every book that I could. I went to 3 different therapists. The first one I went to, she was nice, but she definitely didn't have experience with DPDR now that I know what it is, because at the time I brought up to her, the feeling of like I'm dreaming. And I remember talking to her and I was just like a wreck. I was super distressed. And I remember to her, or she responded to me was, you just need to get your thoughts under control and have you talk to your primary care about your medication, which to me felt very dismissive, very like, okay, so I am crazy. At this point, it's just, that's it. I did start medication at the time just because my mind was racing. I would tell my husband it was like when I was trying to fall asleep, it was like, when you flip the channels trying to find something, or even like when you're on even TikTok or anything, like when you're just fast scrolling through people's stories, that's literally what it felt like. Like I could not fall asleep because it was just
Yeah.
going. So, first therapist did nothing because, gosh, I wish I had thought about calming my thoughts. I went to another therapist who specialized in OCD. But honestly, therapy to me wasn't working because I was starting all of my sessions as here is this bag of trauma. Now tell me what's wrong. So I wanted to trauma dump on these therapists. So it's like, can you pinpoint where it broke and tell me now how to fix it? Give me the quick fix. And it was like, when we would end the session and they were like, okay, so next week we're going to talk about, a part of my brain was like, no, I need you to tell me now. Like I wanted it quick, fast, easy. Um, I was doing that. I did the supplements. The algorithm gets you every time. So, it's the L-theanine.
Oh,
Bought it.
same.
Got it. Yay. The magnesium of all type. Got it.
Yeah.
Your cortisol is high. Take some omega-3. Bought it. Anything anybody on the internet was saying was good, I was right there. Um, so I just did everything. I felt hopeless. I will honestly say I felt hopeless, especially when the harm OCD started creeping in, because it was almost like, okay, now what's going on? Like everything else aside, it's like, okay, now what is this? And it was looking back at it now, again, I see it as like brain definitely went MIA. But I was trying to ration with my anxiety, and I again, like you say, was doing too much at one time, way too much. I was doing all the things and not succeeding at any of them. um I think what honestly helped out was when I joined the community, which honestly I didn't join until maybe a month after I had originally seen you. And I kind of told you this during our first meeting, was I thought I was going to get sold on something. I was like, this is either something religious wise, which I'm not interested in. You're going to tell me to pray it away, which is not what I'm trying to hear. I was like, you're either going to give me, sell me on a package of some kind of medication. I was just like, there's something, there's a catch.
Mm.
But then eventually it just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And I was like, all right, screw it. I'm going to join and let's see where this goes. And I remember watching the videos and, pretty early on, like things started ticking. And um, I don't remember who, I think it was Jay
Oh,
Story of Hope.
yeah, yeah.
After he took I don't know if it was a
Edible.
actual
Yeah,
edible.
I think so.
Um, Yeah, and I remember, he's telling us a story, and I remember him mentioning that his mind was telling him that he was in a coma. And I was like, my mind had literally been doing that. It was like, but you're not seeing this because you're dead. You're not seeing this because you're in a coma. You're not seeing this because it's not real. You're not seeing it was literally that. And when he said it, it was like that bang of, oh my God, oh my God. I was like, someone else said out loud what was going on in my head. And that's kind of when I kept watching the videos, I kept watching them, and I realized I wasn't learning anything. And I remember emailing you that, and you were like, I don't know if you mean that in a positive or a negative. And I was like, no, it's positive. I was like, you're literally not saying anything. I haven't personally either expressed or felt or like talked about. And I was like, that's how I know I'm in the right place. Because you're not saying anything new. I'm not learning anything new. I don't have to memorize anything. You are literally just reinforcing what exists in my head. And I won't say it happened immediately, but there was just one Sunday. I remember changing the sheets on the bed, and I was still like this little ball of anxiety. And it was like what was a soft voice was now a loud voice that kind of came forward and was like, but who said all of this stuff? Like, who said this? Like, the whole like you're going crazy, you're gonna go insane, you're insane, you've already lost it. Even to the point where it was like you went insane, you went into a psych ward, you're now imagining this life. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm just like, it's just never gonna stop. I was like, the what ifs were just never gonna stop. But it was at that moment that my brain went, but who said that? It's all in your head. And it kind of stopped me. Like it took me aback because I was like, is this like another trick? Like, is this now, like, am I now going to lose my head, like my mind? And from that day forward, things just started getting clearer, better, bigger, faster. um, because it was finally clicking. It was finally like, okay, okay, okay. This, I'm not supposed to do anything. Cool, cool, cool. Like, just remember who you are. Like, and a lot of, I would say a lot of those kind of events happened where it was more pep talk between myself because it had been for so many weeks that you're doomed, your life's falling apart, you're never going to get out of this, you're always going to spiral, all of this. And my brain started responding back, or in this case, now my wisdom started responding back with that. No one said that. You are making all this up. It's all in your head. Like, literally, none of this is happening around you. You are digesting things in a different way. Let's stop digesting them that way. And it's interesting because I didn't go to school to be a psychologist. I did at one point think about going into being a therapist. So I went to school, I took psychology courses, minored in psychology. I did all the book knowledge of psychology. So I was really interested in it always. But something that you thought, or I'm sorry, taught and put emphasis on, which is not something that I learned in a book, was that it all surrounds thought. Like the labels to it don't really matter. And like we've learned in the course, the labels are just kind of where you are in your process. And that's never how I saw it. It was just labels. But it really is the thought behind things. And now, like I still get sometimes, the feeling of when I think about it, but things are so much easier for me now to kind of sit and let them pass through. Like the DPDR thoughts, will still come through, but they do slide through. And like I said, I really want everyone to know there is a light at the end of the tunnel because I every time that I go into one of the calls that we do, the weekly calls or a story of hope, and the sense of like no one has it as bad as me, I was there. I was the exception. Trust me, my brain would tell me every time that I would get a little glimmer of hope, but you're the exception. And it was like, stop. I was like, wait, hold on to the hope for just a second. Um, but we're we're not the exception. None of us are the exception. And sure, there are, people that are in different phases of their experience, but everything that everyone shares, I had it like in that span of 2 months. Every single scary what if you could think of, my brain took me there, and it made it so real. The physical symptoms were insane. Like I said, the sweaty hands and things were common, but the pumping in my head, I could hear it. It was like my pillow had a heartbeat every night. Um, my knees would tremble every time I would sit down. It felt like my knees were gonna give out. Had headaches. I cried every day. Like I remember, even every time I would take a shower, it was my crying moment. And I would literally just lay in the bathtub or just like curl up in a ball and just cry and try to think myself out of it. And it was like I can't break it. But it eventually breaks. And it eventually, like, I'm not saying the thoughts aren't there, because they are, but it's very different. The relationship I have with them right now is very, very different. Um, the intrusive thoughts are always there, of course, but all of our lives are intrusive thoughts. If you think about it, sure, some are labeled as scary and some are labeled as terrifying or witty or jokey or funny or all of those, but it literally, all our lives are literally just intrusive thoughts. And it's just up to us which ones we act on. Um, the ones that I really hate the most are the ones about, my child getting hurt. But it's almost like my brain's way of final destinationing me of ways that she could get hurt. So it puts me more on alert. Like for example, the other day I was cutting up boxes in our garage, and I have the box cutter in my hand. So it's like, oh, you're gonna hurt her. And I'm like, no, it's a very logical thing that she could get cut with a box cutter. So maybe we don't bring her around when one of us is like flinging around a box cutter.
Yeah.
And it was that, like, I don't have a physical reaction anymore to the thoughts. And that's kind of when I knew I started healing, was when my body no longer felt it. Um, it's funny, I actually went to a restaurant while all of this was happening, and on the wall, it was like a mural. Someone had painted, "Your brain knows more than you."
Mm.
And when I saw it at the moment, I was like, "What does that mean?" And now I see it as like my brain knows what's going on versus my thoughts. Like my thoughts exist within my brain, but my brain is like, okay, none of that DPDR stuff is real, because, or else I wouldn't be functioning. Or, the reason you don't shake anymore, or the reason you don't get the pit in your stomach anymore, is because that's not real fear. That's not something we actually fear. We actually worry about. So it it's been interesting. It's definitely been interesting, and it's going to be an interesting story to tell. But like I said, I definitely see the humor in things. I always say I was tripping during those days, and but right now I feel like I'm more open to things. I think I was maybe on autopilot for a lot longer than I want to admit to.
Yeah.
And one of my therapist friends, he posted something, give your body a break or it's going to take one for you, and probably not at the best time. And I think I shared it in the community as well. That I feel like my brain did that too. I over and did it. I overstimulated it so much that it was like, I am checking out. Like, you have done me out. So I'm just gonna go. Good luck. I'll be back, but, hold the fort down," and I didn't hold the fort down. It blew away.
Uh,
But, yeah, there's definitely hope on the other side. Like, it's not overnight. I know I'm making it sound like, "Oh, it was only 2 months," but it was 2 months that were very close to taking me out. Like,
yeah.
I could not see the clear picture. I could not see through the storm. I could not see through anything, and now I'm just kind of here. And I know, I wanna say Tara brought it up, during her, story of hope, and it was, she kind of alluded to, we're just spirits, we're just spirits and bodies, living life, and that's literally it.
Yeah.
That we're just here. Um, I did lean a lot into religion at the time, but I also leaned more into my spirituality that I felt like I totally lost during those days. I couldn't get grounded, of course, so none of that meditation stuff was ever gonna work on me because I already felt like I was floating. Um, but just, seeing things, and it does kind of put me in a space right now where I kind of live day by day, but not in a survival mode, but more in a enjoy things now because you don't know how long you have. And it's like, I was so caught up in trying to do too many things at once that I wasn't enjoying myself at the time. So I don't know. It's a bit liberating.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have loved so much of what you said. What, and I know everything to me, you're probably speaking to what you wish you heard early on,
Mhm.
but if there is something that you haven't said that you're like, I wish this first therapist said this, or I wish someone had told me this right away. Is there is there something that you yeah, if you were thinking, oh, I could script this first therapist to be like blah blah blah. This is what I wish she would have said. Maybe like, is there a way that you would have, because when you said, oh, maybe that was the second when you wanted to say, here's, some trauma bonding, but like tell me what happened. And to me, I think you also explained it really beautifully, where taking into account what happened in your childhood, but also I was 3 months postpartum. My husband was sick. My mom had retired. I went back to work. I tried. My daughter decided to nap for 15 minutes. I thought I was going to be exactly as I was. Like, it wasn't like you're mentally broken and that's why. It was like, here's all of this that makes a lot of sense. That was so much pressure. And my brain was like, I'm out. So I don't mean to be now answering it for you, but because that's not, but like, and actually there's less for you to do. You've just done too much. Nothing special you need to do. You're designed really beautifully. This is what happens. And this is what would happen to anybody. You're sitting in the middle of mental health. The reason that you feel so horrible doesn't mean anything about your mental well-being. It just meant there was so much pressure that, just as if there's any pressure on a bridge, it's gonna, um, and there's less for you to do. But I don't mean to be annoying and be like, well, but is it something like that? Or tell me, what do you wish? Throwing out what I even just said. What do you wish somebody said to you?
Yeah. Therapist wise, I wish they would have I wish they would have stopped me.
Mm,
I would go in there and just ramble start with the trauma dump, stop, here's what I did, here's what happened, here's this, here's where I'm at right now, and my thoughts are going here. I would come in hot,
yeah.
from the jump. And I think all I really wanted was for her, in this case, to just stop me and say, hey, hold on a second, just hold on a second, and just sit with me for like a minute. Sit with me for a minute, just what let's think about happy things, or let's think about something else, or like to kind of get me out
To
of my own
change your state
head.
of mind. Yeah. Raise your
Uh,
level of consciousness or something.
yeah, just get me out of my own head, or even stop me from the beginning and just be like, stop the trauma dump. Because I also mentioned it here in the community. I was taking my trauma as like, this is why I'm broken, because I have this trauma. I have so much trauma that it caught up to me and it broke me and I shattered, and my brain is clearly all over the place. And I have a couple days left before they stick me in the padded room. I was literally there. Um, or is it, I can't remember, is it Jennifer during our weekly meetings,
Mhm.
where I think she's mentioned, and I remember she said once, when does your body take too much trauma to the point of no return?
Yeah.
And I identified with that so much because I was like, I reached the point of no return. I was like my body took too much at this point. It's over. So I wish that the therapist had just been like, stop. Like, especially when we learn about trauma during this course, trauma is not a place I can return to. It's not a physical thing. Like, it's already happened. Like, the worst already happened. Like, I can't revisit it even if I wanted to. And I've always seen it that way. But during my heightened anxiety, I was trying to attribute,
Yeah.
how I felt to this trauma that, again, had
Mhm.
already healed. I was just bringing it to the forefront over and over and over again to these therapists and anybody that would listen and be like, this is why, because I have trauma. This
Yeah.
is why I have panic. And it was just like, I was trying to make 2 + 2 = 5 work, and it was just not, the
Yeah.
math was nothing.
But it also doesn't sound like that was ultimately motivating or what you wanted, and I'm wondering if some of it was, and I'm not even saying anything about me, but some of what I share, it was more an understanding where it was like, oh, this makes sense. This actually, not discounting the trauma that you went through. Oh, but that doesn't have anything to do with that. This makes really logical sense of just postpartum, a lot of pressure on myself, husband, mom, like, oh, and my brain just took a like a much more not simple, but like um
I
oh,
do I
like
do wish it had been simple, and something that you said, or something that I really latched onto that you said at the beginning, was during those times of panic, or during those times of really heightened anxiety, your thoughts are distorted, so you don't take them seriously. I honestly feel like if I would have heard that from the jump, starting the Zoom call with her, it would have helped me see it, because then all of the thoughts that were coming in and that felt so real, so serious, so I need to get to the bottom of this, wouldn't have, I could have, I wouldn't say as easily have brushed them off, but I would have been like, okay, okay, repeat that, repeat that, repeat that. Every time the scary stuff comes up, like, distorted, distorted. That's why. Versus here I am just thinking I'm talking to a therapist and I'm going to spiral, and, or she's going to hear what I'm telling her, and she's going to call the cops on me to go get me admitted because I sound like a crazy person and a menace to society.
yeah, yeah. Right.
That honestly would have really helped out. And I think I kind of went on my own journey to try to get someone to validate that I was crazy. I
Mm.
was actually doing the opposite. I didn't want anyone to tell me I wasn't, crazy. I wanted you to tell me I was, because it felt easier to accept. Like, I went to the therapist. I went to the doctor, my doctor, and me and him have really good rapport. And I remember telling him, and I was like, "You must think I'm crazy." And he was like, "No, you'd be surprised." He was like, I've worked in the ER, I've done my rounds, and he was like, the bar to be admitted into a psychiatric hospital is very high. He was like, you wouldn't imagine the things that I've heard that I assumed would get you committed, and I would take it to like an older resident, and they would just be like, no, that's I've heard that all the time. So he wasn't saying I was crazy. Even he wasn't even the one to suggest medication. It was me.
Mm.
It was just kind of confused. And now looking back at it, it was like I was asking this doctor for help to not think. And then I'm just like, he must have been like, what? What's going on? I went to a psychiatrist and I was like, she's definitely going to tell me I'm crazy. Like, this is going to be the one. She studies this. She studies the psychos. I am there. Um, so I go, I'm trying to tell her everything. And ultimately, she ends we're ending the call. And she's just like, okay, so do you want to just stay on your medication? Do you not want to take it? I don't know. She was like, I don't think you need medication. She was like, it just sounds like you need to talk to someone. And I was like, oh, but no, I'm crazy. I was like, I'm crazy. Like, I just needed someone to tell me. And it wasn't until talking to my husband that he again called it out, as far as like, you're on the search to get someone to tell you you're crazy. You're probably not looking for the right thing.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, I'm crazy still though, but okay. But yeah, I like I said, that would have helped me. It is that, I got the little help, like, stop Googling, stop doing Googling. And I was like, okay, pretty easy to do. I'll stop. But all the other thoughts kept coming through and they felt so real, and like I had to do something about them, that I
Yes.
didn't even need Google. It was like my mind was like my worst Google.
Yes. Yeah. Well, two things jumped out at me when you said to your doctor, I want to stop thinking. To me, it's like you wanted your thoughts to settle. You wanted a quiet mind, maybe not the state of no thought, but oh, just more pleasant flowing thoughts, not like, or also, I want to stop analyzing and trying to search for this problem too, was one thing that it was like, I totally get, I want to stop thinking. It's just like, I want this momentum to stop. I want this. Um, and then also, you had crazy thoughts, not crazy, like not, do you know what I mean? Like it was funny,
Yeah.
'cause we're always living in the feeling of our thinking, but oh, my thinking was just nonsense. It was distorted. And that's what happens to everybody when they get really anxious. And sometimes we get obsessive and our
Mhm.
brain like, rah, 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 rah. Doesn't mean anything about who you are, but maybe wanting someone, or I'm wondering if you were like, I want someone to say it. Well, then it would make sense and the search could stop too. It was like, oh, this explains it. But it sounds like, well, that wouldn't be accurate either. It was just
Mhm.
you had a bunch of distorted thinking, and or your brain was exhausted. But then it felt like such a big problem. It was like, well, how could I gotta fix this? But then you're thinking more and more, and some of what we know with DPDR is the brain's like, I just as you said, like, this is too much introspection for me, too much thinking. But then we feel weird because our brain feels weird, but our brain's like, it's all right. Stop just thinking about me. And it's like, but
Yeah.
we know that. And it's like, well, why do I have this weird feeling? Why does it feel like I'm in a dream or I'm high and we just introspect more and more and more. But
Yeah. It
everybody, yeah, knows that. And so it's just like, I have to think my way to feel better. But then it's this ironic thing of then our thoughts are weirder and our brain feels weirder and we feel weirder. Um, and
One thing I did, so the reason I bring up like the childhood trauma is, one, like I said, I was one of those that thought, you know, my body has taken too much and it snapped. I'm a goner. But also one thing that I wanted to highlight was I was so focused on trying to get back to my normal self. Like I wasn't like this. Like it changed overnight. I've never thought these things. I've never this, I've never that. And I don't know that. I can't I can't bet money that during, the traumatic part of my childhood, I didn't experience DPDR. I'm like, what if I did in pockets of time? I didn't know it. And that's kind of how I ended up surviving that, by feeling out of body. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but even I now, as an adult, refer to myself as a child in the third person,
Mm.
like she,
Oh yeah.
she, her. And sometimes I think about that recently, as far as like, I don't know that during that time I didn't have DPDR, and that my brain actually uses that to heal me from traumatic or like very stressful times in life. And then we move on to disconnect me from those events. So that I always think about that, because every I feel like I hear it all the time, but I would say it all the time. It was like, I never thought these things, I never said these things, I never this. And it was like, but I don't know that. I barely remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. I don't even remember. I think it was bread. So I'm like, how do I know that I've never thought that before?
Yeah.
I can't think that far back. There's 30 plus years of stuff going on that I will never remember. So yeah, there's that. And then like I mentioned a couple days ago, there's the energy that is given to things sometimes is what makes it feel more real. Not that you've never thought it before, but the energy that we're giving to it changes. So I listen to a lot of music while I'm working, just random music while I'm typing away. And the other day, this romantic song came on in Spanish that I was like, oh, I love this song. This is, I hear the beginning.
Mm.
Um, and I'm like, this is a Saturday morning cleaning jam. Um, and I just decided to focus on the lyrics for just a quick second. And literally the line that I read or that came on was, I don't know if this is real or if this is a dream. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, so I've said these things before. I've sang these things. I've clearly had them pass through my mind before. And it was like, I didn't react to them, or they didn't trigger existential thoughts or any DPDR, because I was listening to them in a positive and a, level-headed space. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say level-headed, but just a higher mental space than I was during those days. And that's why things that are neutral were becoming so scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it that you said that, because I also think sometimes you're like, I've never had these thoughts. And yes, sometimes they can be weird. But I think in a clear state of mind, like 'cause I had asked on my stories, like, what are your silly intrusive thoughts that you've had on a plane? Because I was just on a plane on Monday and it's Friday. But and I said to my boyfriend, and what, because I thought one was like, what if I start kicking the seat? And what if I do this and then they have to handcuff me? And he's like, oh, and I said, no, these are intrusive. Oh, and what if I open the door? And he looked at me like, and I said, oh, and I said, no, intrusive thoughts. And he's like, oh yeah, those. Oh, I have those. But it was like, it was funny because for a moment he was like, I don't know what you're talking. I'm like, not that you want to do that. Just what if? He's like, oh yeah, I have those all the time. Um, or I've not all the time, but like, you're standing to wait for the bathroom. What if I open the door? I'm like, yeah, those thoughts, and so sometimes we think, oh, I never have. And then it's like, oh yeah, I was on that rooftop party. What if I jumped off? What if I dropped the baby? But our state of mind, or like, I think you had posted this early and hopefully it's okay. Cause I don't, that your sister said she was in such a good place. I feel like I'm dreaming. And that's just sometimes because her life was so good. Um, and I love that you're bringing up in a state of mind, it can feel like, oh my God, this is this. And I'm not wanting to discount how bad anxiety and panic can feel. But look, we think we've reached this crazy new level with our thinking or with our experience. And I really loved how you've been talking about one that I agree. I definitely like dissociated in my childhood, and it's still something I do now, less to a lesser extent. But when you were sharing, it was in a way I felt like this feeling of, dare I say, like one, neutrality, but love or gratitude. And I never thought I would say that about my own experience. I see it really truly as like that's how my brain deals with stuff. And that's how it dealt with some of the trauma that I had. And it's like, I actually, and I do it less so because now I think I do, if my boyfriend and I were having a harder conversation, it's happened less so because I blew up for whatever reason. And I would almost wait. Okay, when are you going to start dissociating? Because it would just like remove me. And it's almost like once I fell in love with it, it just went away. But I'm sure it will come back at times, but I just see it as, I'm sure that's something I did as a child. And I never would have put it into those words until you said that. Cause I thought I've never, like my experience of derealization felt different than dissociation, but it probably wasn't. What it was, oh fucking hell, what is this? I'm losing my mind. And it was all
Mhm.
of this imagination. Also, because sometimes we're adults and we just make it such a bigger deal. Because I was also driving and I'm a mom and what is this? And I'm going to be locked up, just as you said, when I'm sure I had that experience and it was like, okay. Um,
It, like I said, I one thing I really want anyone listening to the story of hope is to like really, really understand that I went through the ringer. Like I, sure, the DPDR stuff, you know, the whole being in a coma thing, like all of that, but I was all over the place. I was like everything. I was like, I'm being punished by God. The I was going so high, far and out of what could have been that I feel like I made it even harder for my brain to kind of come back to itself because I was thinking big, far, and wide. You know, it was like, I'm cursed. I was like, okay, cool. Bye, I guess. Um, you know, I was like, you know, someone put we're very spiritual people. Like community wise, as Hispanics, we are very, you know, into spirituality outside of religion. But my family also we come from like very indigenous backgrounds as well. So like, you know, there's the whole people put hexes and curses and things like that. So even that crossed my mind. I was like, someone did something. I was like, you know, I have to pay for, you know, generational stuff. I'm telling you that I was trying to find the why so hard. I was like, if I can get the why, I'm gonna feel better. And I never found why. I'm not gonna find the why. Just like I don't understand why E equals MC squared. I don't know. It's none of my business. It's none of my business. I'm gonna let someone solve that way down the line. So that's someone else's job. It's no longer my job.
yeah.
But yeah, I was everywhere with this and I wanted to know why it it just elongated it
Mm.
more. And I did, like I said, there is hope on the other side. I couldn't go to the grocery store without panic attacks. Like I said, the dream state to me was the big DPDR one, like, you know, in a dream state. I remember one day going to the grocery store and, you know, picking out like tomatoes and stuff for the groceries this week. And then like the loud anxiety thoughts would come in of like, why do you need vegetables if you're gonna wake up tomorrow? Like you're not gonna be in the same life dream. It was just all over the place. Um uh I think I went to a soccer game during the time because I was like, I'm gonna thug it out. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to go to as many things. I had Googled ERP, so I was like, oh, I got to expose myself to everything everywhere all at once. So I went, even though I didn't want to. And the whole time I'm, enjoying myself superficially. I was, watching the game and all of this, but at the same time, my mind is like, this isn't real. You're not real. This isn't happening. You're thinking this, but you're in a coma. And it was just like, ugh, like I can't get out of my way. um, but yeah, it just gets quiet.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
What I love so much, you put up, uh, like, I think your story is really pointing to the resiliency of the human spirit. You were like, okay, I'm broken from so much trauma, wall. Maybe there's a hex and a curse, wall. Like maybe I'm actually dead and I'm in a coma. Maybe I did go crazy and now this is an illusion. And it's like your human spirit, your well-being kept being like breaking through,
Yeah.
where it's so couldn't you couldn't break it actually, which was what was kind of coming through for me. Like despite all of that, your well-being could not help but break through, and like I think it really really does speak to this innate intelligence, this wisdom, this common sense that, or I don't even know how to put it into words, but just it was just really, I think your story is so resilient, and I am now feeling like when you said I want you to know how far, how wide, how creative
Hmm.
my my imagination was going. And I think it also can speak to, you know like your creativity is such a gift. I think you're funny, your wit and your creativity, and so your brain's like used it in a way against yourself, um to um but there was your well-being. And I love that you were thinking, you saw, because we can get into that habit of why, if I just figure out why, but then it keeps us thinking. And the brain's like, I've told you, stop thinking. And I love
Hmm.
that you're like, transformation and recovery and healing is not linked to why. And sometimes the why is my brain's just fucking tired because like, but sometimes it's like, well, it can't be that simple. It can't be that I was postpartum and put a lot of pressure and I just had too much noise in my head. It has to be something big and serious. And my healing has to be big and serious. And it was like, but I love that because I think people want to know, or if I, why keeps the fuel, keeps the fire going. What's that? Why is just like, because it keeps
Fueling the fire.
fueling the fire. But we think if I somehow have the why, but to me also, if there is a why, we're not going to see it by thinking more. Do you know what I mean? Like to me, the why is my brain needed a break. Like, I mean, it's, and also I'm not trying to say that's your why, but to me, it makes a lot of sense. And that's more what I've heard with went back to work. My husband was sick. My mom had just retired. I put so much pressure. My baby stopped sleeping. Wait, but that's not crazy making. Like, but I don't know what I mean. Like, where if there is a why, sometimes it's just, well, I'm a human and and we have a chronic state of stress. And then how we heal is simply like we're actually really designed beautifully. It doesn't have to be and we can't break. I think what you've highlighted is this misunderstanding that probably other people have um about the spirit, about our like, well, because I don't know if we have enough of a conversation about that. Well, is there a point where I've just ruined myself with my trauma, or not that we don't do our trauma ourselves, but that, and now I'm just, there's no help for me. Um, and I think what you to me were saying is no, that was also an illusion. That's also not true. I had already healed and my experience was separate, and it wasn't like, oh, here it is. Because I think I, in my own way, thought that like insanity was lurking. And when I had my panic attack and then derealization, um, it felt like as if like a lot of my lives or a lot of my sanity, like in video games, if like that was so big, it was like that wiped out 8 of my sanity lives or whatever. It was like, there's fucking 2 left. You know, it was
Like
like
a cat.
you are on 2 or whatever. It was like, it was this illusion that somehow I would reach this point that my mental health was just broken, like no more lives left. This was, and that's so untrue, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but it feels really real because we're living in this misunderstanding sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I will emphasize that humor is such a powerful tool. Again, I feel like a lot of people sometimes think, I'm like ignoring my problems and laughing about it, but I'm like, it really does help. A- And that's how I could tell that I started getting better because my sense of humor was coming back. Like I remember one day, I'm doing something in my room, um, and the what ifs were coming up. The what if this, what if that, what if this? And my humor or my wisdom or whatever it was just kind of came through, and it was like, what if you just shut the fuck up? And like I just kept going. Um, and I could hear it happening more often. Like, what if you accidentally poison someone? What if you mind your own fucking business? Like things like that started happening. And I was like, okay. I was like, it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be light. It's supposed to be this. Or like, when the whole you're in a coma or like you're imagining this. A lot of my humor comes from like TikTok and Instagram. So at one point it was like, oh, not you being dead. Look at you being creative. Like things like that.
It's so creative. Yeah.
Look at you. Not you being dead. Um, so like all that would happen, or um, I would be, trying to color with my nieces, and I would mess something up. And again, like it was like the funny bully, I call it, would come up, like the bully to my anxiety, and be like, damn, bitch, you can't even color through the lines and you want to pretend you imagine this life. You can't even color this tree in. And it was just, again, that whole like, all of these were coming up, and it was like, you're right. You're right. I'm not that creative.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I remember that you had said, and I hope it's okay.
Yeah.
I share think that's, when you were thinking about dreaming and it occurred, you were like, and I know you love your life, but you were like, if I was dreaming, I would be a millionaire with nannies and
Yeah.
a yacht. Like I dreamed this beautifully ordinary life, but it was something about like, yeah, that to me as the anxious, like, oh my God, why thinking everything's settled. And there was your humor, there was your wisdom, which for you looks like, as you said, like a little uh bully, wise ass, funny, like rational. And you're like, yes, like I love that voice. Then you heard it. And it was like, um,
I mean, I even joke about it now, like with the whole the dream state. The other day when I'm logging in to pay like this massive water bill that we got, I'm just like, right now would be a good time to wake up because this is crap. I'm not trying to pay this. Okay, cool. And then just kind of kept going. Or I would like pinch my arm and be like, okay, mortgage is coming out. Like, no, okay, cool. I guess I'll pay it. So I'm definitely joking about it more. And like I said, they're still ill in
yeah.
a way, especially with um the harm stuff. Or the other day I bought on Amazon like a used kitchen mat.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, just it was used, and when I'm cleaning it, I noticed it was like grainy on top. So the logical idea would be that, maybe it's flour, salt, so many powders used in a kitchen. And my brain started drifting to like, cocaine. What if you poison everybody accidentally and like you accidentally put drops of cocaine in food? And my mind was like, what is going on? Or like, all the like deadly powders was like, you're gonna poison everybody, or you brought this into your house trying to save $2 on this mat. And I was like, well, I guess we'll get to it if we get to it. And eventually, like, I was hosting Mother's Day lunch, so like, people showed up, and at the end of the day, I was like, I totally have forgotten
Yeah.
about this map, and now it's there, and I'm like, all right, well,
Yes.
I guess we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It,
what
it-
do you say now when you have an intrusive thought? And it doesn't sound like, okay, I'm working hard at having this technique, but you don't take it as seriously. Like as a result of the understanding you have, it's like, okay, and then you forget about it eventually.
yeah, yeah. I either forget about it, or like I try to see the logic in it, or even not even the logic. Sometimes I'm like, I read the news so much. I love watching movies, and I'm like, you're not even freaking out about your own thing. I'm like, you're now thinking of this movie or this news story or this like final destination scenario. And I'm like, of course you would, because you've seen those movies.
Yes. Yeah.
Like your mind didn't make that up. It pulled it from your memory bank.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're not like, oh my God, here where your imagination like grips you. You're like, you can't really fool me. I have a, even because it's not like I love that we're having the conversation. Our peace of mind and quiet mind and good feeling and enjoyment of life isn't like I never have an intrusive thought. Because I think I shared when my daughter had a tie-dye party in February, I went down to do some of the washing and there was like a bag of some of the mix for tie-dye. And it was like, and so I saw it. I'm like, did you use the sponge? And my brain also, it wasn't ended up being not a bad chemical, but like then my brain's like, oh my God, all the girls are going to die. I threw out the sponge, which was that. But then they got separate plates for their Thai food and whatever. But part of me's like, I know I care about kids' safety. But then my logic was like, people have tie dye and it's not like everyone's dropping dead from tie dye. Like I just knew enough to be like, um, it didn't take me on a ride, but it doesn't mean that. And a lot like, yeah, sometimes I might have a thought when it comes to kid safety, like, but my brain's like, do you want to picture all the girls just dropping dead? Because I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I washed like they're 17, so I wasn't going to be like, wash your hands, everybody. But my logic brain was like, I bet they wash their hands. And even if they didn't, like, I don't think everyone's truly going to drop dead. And I just left it alone and went upstairs and watched my show and like forgot about it. But I used to think, um, oh, I'm going to find something and do something and I'm never going to have a weird thought again. And it's like most of the time I don't. But even this afternoon, my door to my bedroom door didn't open just for one little second. And I thought, what if I was locked in? And tonight I'm just home alone. Actually, just happens to me. And I just laughed right away. Like, because I thought that'd be hysterical. And then I moved on. And so I
Mhm.
think kind of even to your point, we've probably all had these thoughts. And it's just what happens is sometimes we're in a more vulnerable place and we have this in an innocent overreaction. Um,
Mhm.
well, I can't thank you enough. This has been so great. Um,
Yeah.
so great. Is there anything that you feel like hasn't been said? Um, that you're like, okay, one more thing or anything?
Um, no, I would just reinforce humor. I know it's a lot harder to act than say. Especially I get it. Look, I've already said, I was all over the place. I was in all of it, in the thick of it. But the humor really is kind of the an antidote
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
anxiety. Um, it really does help.
yeah.
Like uh, I don't go to the grocery store as a ball of panic. I don't go. I go to soccer games. I don't freak out. I went to a concert last week, which we had booked during the time of my panic. And I remember thinking, I can't go to that. There's no way. Like, all those people are going to make me panic. All those people are going to make me like throw up from the anxiety. And I went, and I don't think DPDR thoughts crossed my mind once. I wasn't drinking because I was scared. of like the anxiety, like it's gonna get me. um, I do, just obviously not to get drunk, but I was like, I had my cocktails, I had my dancing. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Um, but there's just the humor in it.
Yes.
Even when I was walking through and I was like, oh my God, there's a lot of people here. I
Yeah.
was like, ooh. Um, but then my mind just started going like, they're just regular people. I'm sure a lot of them are also like not into being in crowds either. Just take your little drinky drink, go get your fruity little drinky drink, and you'll be fine. So a lot of that, it's a lot of
Yeah.
the pep talk happens, and it happens from a humorous place, and that's usually what calms you down. Like if you think about it, when you've ever been like really scared, or like in a movie theater, like when there's like a scary scene
Yeah.
on the screen,
Yeah.
and you hear someone laugh in the crowd, you kind of can't help yourself but to like, oh, like you kind of broke the tension. You broke like my focus on this like super scary thing.
Yeah.
That's literally what happens. It's like the laughter in the crowd. It's like, oh, all right.
Snaps us out of it, and I love that you brought it up. There's this book, Flying Without Wings by Dr. Arnold Besser, and he got polio 6 months before the polio vaccine, and he was a quadriplegic, but then he became a psychiatrist and married. And so he has this little paragraph that I'll read because it just, when you were sharing it, he talks a lot about humor and laughter, and he just has the best attitude. And he said, laughter, it's something from the gods, and it sets us on an Olympian plane where we are no longer the victims of mean circumstances. We become integrated into some larger perspective. It is a perspective that nurtures us back to health for a moment and restores aspects of ourselves which we thought we had lost forever. Humor and laughter are so commonplace that people tend to dismiss their full significance. When I could recognize something funny in what a moment before had seemed a hopelessly grim situation, a wonderful transformation occurred. It was as though I had been suddenly healed and restored to health, even if only for a moment, and even if only in my mind, because he was quadriplegic. I still find relief, and my sense of well-being is restored whenever I can laugh or find something to smile about. With humor, not only do I feel more whole inside, and not only do I feel closer to those about me, but I also feel a quality of elation, rising or raising the realm of consciousness to a space that is larger than before. And I really love that you were talking about that, and that, to me, I also feel like your insights came wrapped with humor and wrapped with lightness. And I do feel like when I've had the insight, for me, seriousness is my kryptonite. Like if I get serious, whether it's about work or about parenting or about myself, like seriousness is so bad. And the antidote to me is this lightness about it, and I think serious is like the head, and I can be sincere about it, but I really have loved that you've talked about humor. I just think you also have so many, like, okay, I thought about this with this song or with, Drake and Kendrick, and like, you're just boom, boom. So if anyone is listening and you're in the community, definitely go and look at Jessica's past, because you've had so many, which I think with humor, it's a different way of sharing stories. And I think kind of like poetry or another art form where it goes beyond our intellect. I think some of that humor, or also if we wanted the friend that was comforting us, we don't want this. Also, I'm not knocking any serious friends, but we want the funny friend, like the friend that like is like, girl, you are crazy or whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? I think someone that's not like, oh my God, wait, what? You're having a panic attack? We want someone that's like, let's go get that fruity drink and move on.
Yeah, like,
Uh,
oh, do you want to go get drunk? That friend, or yeah, like you hear it a lot if you're on TikTok or even Instagram, where a lot of solutions to things are always like the funny. It's like, you got to be delusional. Delusional is the solution, but people say it as delulu is the solulu. So I'm like, be that kind of friend, or like talk to yourself in your head that kind of way. Like even when it's like, the biggest one for me was like the self-harm OCD, because it was like, how is something in my control no longer in my control? Though that was very scary, but it was like my, my humor would come back and say, "We will cross that bridge when we get to it,"
Yeah.
or "We'll worry about that then," or something. Like, let's focus on this right now. Like, you got too much chip on your dip.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah. Well, I was even in a low mood a couple months ago. And it was like, I don't know, it was like probably the worst time ever in my relationship. We're past it. But I just was really low. And then I was like taking my son and his friend to the mall and I was there. And then I had this thought, I'm in my miserable era. And I like it, like poof, it was so funny to me because I was like, and I instantly wasn't miserable, but I also gave myself permission. Well, I'm just miserable era wasn't like, now you've got to be happy, but like, I don't know. And I think it is like, maybe I pictured something on social media, something of like, cause people are like, oh, my era and this, and it was like this lightness about it, which was like, rather than like, oh my God, I'm serious. And yeah, what if I do die by suicide? It was like, I'm in my miserable era. Like, I don't know. It made me laugh.
Yeah, yeah, and all the like my husband's the like best person at the humor stuff. But I'm like self-proclaimed meme queen. So I have a very photogenic memory. So I can see it once and like I know immediately like what she said goes to this meme.
Oh.
Um, so there's this one image on social media that it's supposed to be encouraging, which is I got that dog in me. I want to say DMX said it. It's like a way of saying like, I got a dog in me. Um, like I'm tough, like
Yeah.
a Rottweiler in a sense. But I found one that was like, I got that dog in me, but this is what I mean. And it was like a painting of like this tiny little dog sitting on a couch, just like just like nervous. Or and I was like, that's me. I was like, that's me right now. Or the other one was like, it was like a service dog, but instead of saying start service dog, it just said, do not touch. He's nervous. And it was like what I mean when I said I got that dog in me.
Yeah.
So I was like, that was me. I was like, I was just that little nervous dog sitting on a couch.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love those. Now I want to find them because I've seen those.
I'll share some. I
Okay,
have a lot of them on my
share
phone.
some and I'll put them in here. Yeah, I'll say this and wrap it up. Like I have diabetes and I have type 1 diabetes. But I don't follow many. I only follow one woman because all she does is post funny memes. And so it doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes my diabetes, I feel sorry for myself, which is literally like once or twice a year. So I just don't want anyone to be like, oh, diabetes. It's fine. It's literally not a big deal. And I know my wisdom is like, because what I want is someone, I think with this woman and what we talk about, they get it and it's fucking funny. It's like me when my blood sugar is so I'm like, hey, like it's all like my number one. That's like, I don't read anything about diabetes, only funny memes. And that's all I need to be like, oh, someone fucking gets it. And it's hilarious. Um, it's
Yeah, I
like,
can't.
and
I was doing that when I was um like Reddit is where things go to die. But I read on Reddit, I look up OCD and it's just like it's incurable, it sucks, I can't I'm never the same, I can't do this, like I cry all the time because I'm always scared of this. And I'm like, stop, please, can we like I can read it once and then I'm just like, I can't, I don't want to relate to, it's the end of the world. Sometimes it's like, sure, let's think about that, but where's the funny side of it? And let's lighten this up.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think just since we brought it up, I do not like OC kind of to the point of labels. OCD is not incurable at all. I mean, somebody might have my brain definitely can be a bit more obsessive than other people's. Definitely a noisier, funnier brain. But like, I'm extremely at peace. I don't have any compulsions. Like, I just, but save that tangent. But I think, yeah, even for diabetes, like, I don't want to know anybody. This is so horrible. And it's like, I'm gonna get that out of here. Like,
Mhm.
that is extremely demotivating for me. But I think also we're knowing everyone knows you best. And we're kind of chatting around not false positivity, but hope and lightness and the humor, and also just clearing up misunderstandings. And truly, I think your story is really one of like the resiliency of the human spirit. Like, I love that you're like this, and how far and how wide and how creative your mind could be. And your well-being was like, nope, um, nope, like, it's not that big of a deal, nothing's wrong. And then everything quieted down. And it was like, I just love that. And I do know it's so common because I'm sure even someone's listening, oh, she didn't mention this weird thought. So even if it's
I had all of them, like relationship OCD, self-harm OCD, existential OCD, religious OCD, like everything, false memory OCD, all of them. Every single one happened like that movie, everything, everywhere, all at the same time.
yeah, yeah,
All of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And they were just layered.
yeah. I like
So
that
I
you're
could,
like that.
yeah, yeah, I could never just like discredit the self-harm. It was like, you did it and you don't remember, and it's because of this, and now you're going to do it again. And it's like, ah.
Yeah. To me, it just speaks to like your brilliant, fast moving, creative mind, that it was like a finger hold of stuff, you know. But even with all those layers, it's like, oh, there was your well-being. And kind of just to wrap it up, when you were saying kind of what I share here, maybe what you were saying was helpful was like, oh, this is simple. This isn't anything brand new. I'm not like, here's this complicated technique that's going to add on even more thinking. And sometimes the simplicity is what's needed that dissolves all those layers. Because I do remember when you're like, oh, I've heard this all before. But I think it's like, it speaks to that resiliency and that just the simplicity and the knowing, um, that is there's just such beautiful, because it doesn't add more complication and more noise. And it's like, I don't know, then there is really less for us to do. And there is so much hope. So for anybody listening, I hope that you, one, laughed and enjoyed it. And if you're definitely in the community, come and check out Jessica's post. Is there, and I love also that sometimes you're like, I'm taking a break and I'm not posting as much. So even if you feel free, leave the community anytime, but your post will be there with your insights and your stories of hope. And I think that's kind of where it's so cool to see sometimes where people ask questions or they share, and then how it evolves. And so I just can't thank you enough for taking this time and for sharing already in the community, sharing your insights, and then sharing your story here with everybody.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you. And I have wanted to leave the community, but I honestly stick around because one, I like to see people's wins. But also I do like to keep sharing, to kind of keep the whole story of hope going, because it doesn't stop here. Like I said, the thoughts still happen, and some days are just like poopy and other days feel better. So I will keep posting. I'll keep posting the memes. I'll keep bringing the humor. I'm like, that funny little Six Flags bus, if you remember, from like the 90s with the old guy.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am that. I am like, if you want to take a little mental break and, come laugh at some memes with me, like, that's what I do.
Well, I want you to also know, put yourself first, and you can leave anytime. And even if you're like, I saw this meme, you can send it to me and I'll post it. Like, I don't want you to ever feel like you have to be there, because you are the most important, and we will miss you. But, I mean, that's an aside, and we can have that conversation another time. I just don't ever want you to feel like you owe anybody anything, because you
Yeah.
enjoying your life is the biggest story of hope, and the best thing
Well,
for you.
yeah, I wanted to, and then there was the universe coming around. I forgot. I think Mike Posner was interviewing someone on Instagram. I don't know if he was a professional speaker, like a positive coach or what, but I remember him saying something that really resonated was some of the most beautiful people are those that have gone through the flames and end up coming back with buckets of water. So I always resonate with that because I'm like, I'm always like, hey everyone, like Sure, like I may have made it to the other side, but I still want others to like come with me. Let's go have fun. Let's go party. Let's go do something. So
Yeah.
that quote always comes back. So here I am with my little pails of water.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. Well, this was a big fire hose of water for almost an hour and a half. So thank you. And thank you so much. And I really appreciate it. And I hope you have.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye.
All right, bye.